In the year 1330, in a village crouched beneath the shadow of a stone church, marriage is not about choice, it is about survival. The morning of your wedding does not begin with excitement, it begins with negotiation. If you are a peasant girl in a thatched cottage in rural England, you do not wake beside a mirror rehearsing vows. You wake beside your mother, who has already decided your future with a handshake and a jug of ale. Your dowry is modest, a chest of linen, perhaps a goat, maybe a narrow strip of land that barely feeds one mouth. That land is your value. That goat is your bargaining power. You might be 12, perhaps 14, if you are considered late. Across the village, the man you are to marry has likely seen you only in passum, a figure carrying water, a shadow bent in the fields. He does not ask if you are kind. He asks if your family's plot touches his, if your brothers are strong, if your father's debts will become his. If you are of the nobility, the stakes rise higher, but the freedom shrinks further. In a drafty manor house, a young noblewoman is told she will marry a man twice her age to secure a border dispute. Her dowry is not goats, it is castles. Her womb is not her own, it is a diplomatic tool. You do not marry to feel, you marry to bind. The morning of the wedding arrives like any other in 1330, yet nothing is ordinary. The air is thick with anticipation, not of joy, but of duty. The household stirs before dawn. Servants move silently, attending to tasks that in any other context would be mundane. Today, every action is ritual, every gesture measured. The bride and groom are prepared not for happiness, but for compliance. For the bride, preparation is as public as it is private. She is bathed carefully, not for comfort, but for symbolism. Water is poured, herbs steeped, linens laid out. Every detail signals purity, obedience, and readiness. Her dress is heavy, layered, and cumbersome. Veils obscure her face, both shielding her from the world and marking her as property to be presented. Silver embroidery, colored dyes, and finely woven fabric are statements of status and wealth. They speak more of the family than of the wearer. The bride's hair is braided or hidden, hands adorned minimally, for adornment is not for herself. Every adornment is for the gaze of others, the priest, the witnesses, the future in-laws. She is being presented, not choosing, not celebrating. Her body has been trained, her mind restrained, for the performance that will define her life. The groom's preparation is equally orchestrated, though different in tone. He dons formal attire, sometimes incorporating armor or symbols of his family's position. He practices the stance, the bow, the ritual steps that indicate readiness for ceremony and social expectation. Weapons may be polished and displayed, not for violence, but for the symbolism of strength and protection, signals that he can uphold the honor and property he is about to claim through marriage. Religion underpins every movement. Priests and church officials act as guides, supervisors, and enforcers. They repeat the moral imperatives, invoking scripture, reminding both bride and groom that obedience is divine, that resistance is sinful. Children who have grown accustomed to play now face solemnity. Their lives are being redirected along a path set by law, custom, and faith. The ceremony itself is startlingly brief. There are no rows of decorated chairs, no carefully curated guest lists. The wedding takes place outside the church doors, not inside, because marriage, in the eyes of the medieval church, is first a public contract. The priest asks the question in Latin. You answer in a language you barely understand. Your consent is required, technically. But consent in a village of 20 families is a fragile thing. When the priest asks if you take this man, the entire community watches. Your father stands beside you. The neighbors who rely on your family's cooperation stand behind. To refuse is to fracture the delicate ecosystem of survival. And survival always wins. The feast that follows is less celebration and more redistribution of resources. Bread trencher bowls soaked in stew, ale thick and cloudy, a roasted pig if the harvest was generous. The entire village attends because weddings are rare moments of caloric abundance. Yet beneath the laughter is an unspoken understanding. This union must produce children, quickly. Infant mortality stalks every cradle. A woman's body is expected to endure pregnancy after pregnancy. Each birth is a gamble against death. There are no anesthetics, no sterile instruments, no guarantees that either mother or child will survive the night. Romance does not shield you from childbirth. And then there is the bedding ceremony. In some regions, especially among the nobility, the couple is escorted to the marriage bed by witnesses. The act of consummation is not private intimacy, it is legal verification. The sheets themselves may be inspected for blood to confirm virginity, a stain elevated to proof of family honor. In this world, your body is evidence. If the marriage fails to produce an heir, blame falls swiftly, and almost always on the woman. Barrenness is not a medical mystery. It is a moral accusation. Looking back at a medieval wedding in 1330, it is tempting for a modern mind to dismiss it as merely formal or quaint. Yet beneath the layers of ritual and ceremony lies a system both deliberate and brutal, designed to enforce control and extinguish personal choice. The cruelty of these unions is not accidental. It is structural, woven into law, custom, and faith. At its core, the wedding is a transaction, not a partnership. Children are betrothed before they can comprehend what it means to love, to desire, or even to consent. Their futures are traded like currency, their bodies and identities treated as instruments for family gain. Dowries, land, and alliances dictate the terms. The bride's womb, her labor, her service, and her obedience are all factored into negotiations, reducing a human life to a ledger of value. This is cruelty born of practicality, of a society that prioritizes survival and wealth over humanity. Women bear the brunt of this system. From childhood, they are conditioned to obey, to submit, to internalize the expectations of parents, clergy, and society. Their education emphasizes virtue, chastity, and domestic skill, preparation not for autonomy or self-expression, but for a lifetime of service. The bride enters her marriage knowing her voice, her will, and her desires are secondary, often irrelevant. Her body is legally and socially under her husband's authority, her freedom curtailed. Even small acts of independence are dangerous, often met with reprimand, gossip, or coercion. The psychological toll is immense. Fear and compliance dominate every interaction, beginning with preparation, reinforced through procession, and codified during ceremony. The bride and groom are trained from childhood to accept authority, to prioritize duty over desire, to see their own lives as subordinate to the will of family and society. Any deviation threatens social standing, security, and survival. Childhood innocence is stripped away before the first veil is lifted, leaving only the burden of obedience. The social and religious reinforcement intensifies the cruelty. Clergy act as both spiritual guides and enforcers of law, ensuring that vows are irreversible and compliance absolute. Witnesses and community members observe every step, every gesture, ensuring that behavior conforms to expectation. Social pressure is omnipresent. A whispered complaint, a misstep, or a subtle defiance becomes a moral and legal liability. The wedding is not a private union, it is a public declaration of compliance, a performance with consequences for failure. Even the consummation of the marriage, often thought of in modern imagination as romantic, is a mechanism of control. It is a legal confirmation of the contract, a tangible assertion of authority, and a reinforcement of social hierarchy. Desire is irrelevant, fear and duty prevail. Her labor, her sexuality, all become tools of social enforcement, mechanisms through which the contract is made real. The permanence of the system compounds the cruelty. Unlike modern relationships, medieval marriages were difficult to dissolve. Divorce was nearly impossible, annulments rare and typically reserved for the wealthy or politically connected. The consequences of disobedience, rebellion, or deviation extended beyond immediate punishment. They threatened the family's standing, the security of property, and the stability of alliances. Survival depended on obedience, leaving no room for personal happiness. Finally, the cruelty is systemic. It is not simply about one marriage, one ceremony, or one family. It is embedded in a society where survival, politics, and economics outweigh personal choice. Each wedding is a lesson in hierarchy, authority, and compliance, repeated across villages, towns, and kingdoms. Yet to reduce this world to brutality alone would be too simple. Affection can grow in strange soil. Two people bound by necessity may find companionship in shared labor. A husband plowing beside his wife in frostbitten fields may learn her rhythms. A woman who once feared her husband may come to rely on his protection during harsh winters. Love, when it appears, is not thunder, it is endurance. But the system itself does not care for tenderness. It cares for continuity. Marriage in 1330 is a mechanism. It stabilizes property lines. It organizes inheritance. It ensures that fields are worked and children are born to inherit them. The church sanctifies it, the crown taxes it, the village depends on it, and the individuals inside it adapt. So when we look back at a medieval wedding and search for romance, for stolen glances and whispered vows, we misunderstand the battlefield on which these unions were forged. This was not a celebration of two hearts choosing each other. It was a treaty signed in flesh, a survival pact in a world where loneliness could kill as surely as famine. And yet against all of that weight, against arranged futures and relentless expectation, some couples still managed to carve out small pockets of warmth, not because the system allowed it, but because humans, even in 1330, were stubborn enough to seek connection in the narrow spaces history left them. A medieval wedding was not about the fantasy of forever. It was about making it through the next winter.